All right. That it always makes me want to start drumming again, man.
I was gonna say, I liked the fake music there for like a hot second, but then it makes me feel icky.
Oh, yeah, the other one.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, I can't. I mean, I was like, oh, it's new. Oh, but like, give me the old stuff. I think it's kind of like the perfect topic for today too. But yeah, welcome,
it's like Weezer.
Welcome. Yeah, seriously, it's a Thursday. Yeah, man, it's March 26th, the year 2026. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 915.
Yeah. Are you getting nervous yet?
About what?
Vols, aren't they playing tonight? Or...
Dude, no, we play. Dude, nervous. I'm nervous about like being able to keep my lids open. They don't play till 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna be a first half kind of guy. I either need them to be up by 20 or down by 20. I mean, like, given the fact that how our season's gone, we've blown like 5 double-digit leads this year. So you know what? They still might end up in a loss. Nah, dude. The way I thought the tournament goes, Sweet 16 for us is kind of a little bit. We're like on the gravy train. Like I had low expectations. Yeah, I didn't even have them beating Virginia in my bracket. Oh. I was away from the homers. I was like, well, if you do it that way, then it's a win-win, right? Like Virginia wins, bracket intact. Tennessee loses, my team's going to Sweet 16. So it really is like a win-win. Like if you separate like your favorite team and you can disconnect from that. So yeah, I mean, listen, it is what it is. I find this weekend like the least exciting weekend.
Really?
I'm like, yeah. I'm pumped Tennessee's playing, but I mean, I guess there's so many games in the first weekend and like so much can happen that it's, I don't know. Yeah, I'll be excited against once again, but it's like, it's just fun. Like it's just a kickoff of the, but yeah.
First weekend is like, it's like it's a quick weight loss scheme. You get all excited about it. Oh, that might tie us in. But
I was going to say, like you're back to your WKRN Channel 2 Tuesday.
Yeah, you just it's all there. It's like a basketball hack, and then you're kind of like wanting for more, and then it just never comes. Mm-hmm. Especially when your team gets knocked out in the first round by High Point. Ugh.
Hey, there's worse things in the world that freed up your week, and now you can be zen, right? Before we get going on the topic for today, I need to get my thesaurus out and make sure that if you drop any more grammar bombs on me, that I can look it up like as quickly as possible, so I can keep us on track.
Just don't worry about it, dude. I'm off today. I am off.
Oh, well, one of us can be off, one of us can be on. I'll try to be at least someone on.
Start a new journal thing called Word of the Year.
That's just right. As always have some kind of a word of the year.
Just one year, one a year.
Yeah, it is. No, it's good to be here. Hope you guys are having a great week and getting some good weather. I think it's gonna be 88 here today. So yeah, we're just living our best Midwest March. You got Oceanside 70.3 this weekend. You got Texas 70.3 this weekend. Pretty big. Pretty big pro field at Oceanside. Excited to see that race go off. Checked out for those of you doing Texas 70.3. I mean, they're going to have like the best weather they've had in like a decade down there. Low wind, low heat. Like you're going to have a great race. I think Oceanside is going to be a little bit warmer, so not nearly as cold. So yeah, I mean, I think, it's great racing weekend. A lot of things to come, but we were chatting before we went live about things to talk about today, and we went from one topic to about 7 or 8 topics, so we'll whittle it down to one. But one of the best kind of quotes that I heard over the last few days, just from podcasts and interviews, was the quicker something is gained, the quicker you are able to lose it. And in the context of the conversation, it was used, and obviously I think you can I mean, you could string that phrase across everything, right? Like about, wealth and all these different kinds of things. Like the quicker you make it, like you're probably the decision like you're playing the stock market or you're playing you're gambling, right? Like the risk you took to make this huge leap, you're probably likely to take that same risk again. You're probably just as likely to lose it, if not more. But in the context of this conversation, you're just talking about fitness, and they were just simply talking about like, that, as a country and I think just a society, right? It's like it's very, very easy to sell, like quick fixes, 4, 6, 8 week, like these are all like the length of time, like programs people try to sell, like, 4 weeks this, 6 weeks to that, 8 weeks to this, like this is all you need. And they feed into people's ADD and ADHD like mentality of, one, like lack of attention span, and two is just like our inability to be, consistent, and also our desire to have like everything now without the long-term effort to get it. Right. And he was simply saying like, yeah, a lot of these, like anything that's super high intensity, which is, what sells a lot of the time because it's different, it's all about, it's all about the quality over the quantity. And like, you just I want to go hard. And that's my biggest bang for the buck. And a lot of people like to tell themselves that because that's what they like. But when it comes down to like, where the rubber meets the road, it's just not the case. But what happens is you'll see, and I think you see this a lot with like first-time athletes and how people train, is they might do like a different training protocol with like a lot of high intensity, and they go hard, and they might see some immediate gains, right? Because they were probably going easy before that, right? And so then it's like, oh, well, even if you have like a really weak cake, right? And you go to put a little bit of icing on it, it's still going to be the best version of the current cake that you have. Even if we're rocking with like a single layer here, we're still going to have a little bit of icing and a little bit of sprinkles on top of what it would have been just like, straight up sponge cake. And so it's going to be, you're going to feel good. You're going to be a little bit faster. But if you keep doing that, right, you're going to stagnate, and then you're going to get worse, right? So the quicker you gain something, the quicker you lose it. And the same thing can be said for like, if you do that same thing 4, 6, 8 weeks and you get really fast and you take some time off, it's all but gone. And basically what he was saying was, yeah, it's like, I'm really not super interested in what I can do for people in 6 weeks, because, it is, I kind of said this too in like the email that I sent out on Monday. It was like, yeah, I mean, when you pick up a new athlete, start training a new athlete, new stimulus is always going to be good, right? Because your body's like, oh, I'm going to change up. Like that's why most diets work, right? It's not about really what you're, eating. It's just that it's a different thing, or it's more about what you're not eating, right? And so you do a little bit different. You're more mentally engaged. Oh, this is new, right? Because a lot of times athletes will just change coaches to just change. They just want change. They need a different spice of life. They need things different, delivered a different way. That's it. Right. They just need it done differently. But then that's, those coaches, those athletes usually like bounce around from coach to coach looking for a stimulus, just based on like lack of attention or needing a different, spice of life. And what he was saying was like, yeah, I'm interested in what I can do for you over like, months and years, because the longer it takes you to gain something, right? Like, we always talk about, not slow development, but we try to be very realistic in how we try to develop the athletes that we work with. Is there is no overnight success, right? You might see the success and you might feel like it happens overnight, but it was really just an accumulation of, the 90 to 9,000 nights before it, right? That's what led you to the overnight success. That's what all things, right? In all sports and in life. And he was just, simply saying like, listen, like it's, the longer it takes you to get fit, like you're going to get fitter. But then losing it is very, very tough because you've been so consistent in what you did to get there. It's actual like what I would call lasting change, right? Or actual, not firm fitness, right? But like legit, you are now fitter. Right? Like it's so hard to do that. And that's why, you'll go out and on both sides of the coin, right? You can go out and have like, a really bad run. It doesn't mean you're always going to have that. Now you're actually a bad runner all of a sudden, right? It doesn't happen overnight. The next day you're probably right back to where it is. Same thing can go for like having the best run of your life. Don't expect that the next day. Right? But again, like we live in this world of, short-term gains and immediate change, and a lot of it too, like it's to feed the lack of attention that every person I think is gaining like every single month, every single year as we like evolve. Like the ability to stay focused, the ability to stay dialed in, the ability to stay in a single process, right? We change things just for the sake of changing things. We do more things just for the sake of doing more things. But the longer it takes to gain, right, the harder it is to rip from you. But the quicker you gain something, right, the easier it is to rip away. And I think, again, like there's a billion different ways we can like make an analogy to fitness and to training and triathlon, but also like there's just a lot of ways we could, like make that analogy and how it also goes with life.
Yeah. I mean, one of my first thoughts was like, how are these 18-year-old kids getting all this NIL money gonna, it's like they're just dropping 5 million in their lap and they got it like overnight, and how quick that might go away. But anyway, this is such a topic that's so close to me personally, because I have a tendency to I want it quick, and you see those short gains and you're like, that's the way. Then you start going, that's the way. But this year I've really been trying to be patient. And I think patience is the whole key. And it's sort of like, yeah, I'm going to do Ironman Wisconsin again, but I'm not like forcing my way to it again, because I've talked about that triathlete life cycle, not life cycle, but the triathlete loop, where we kind of do the same things every year and expect different stuff. And so I've been trying to really slowly build and be patient with it. And it's so difficult because even like with running, and I've been pretty consistent with treadmill and running outside and, not long, but just consistent stuff. And I'll see kind of occasionally, it's just so difficult to see it, the progress sometimes. And, I can be just cruising along and be like, damn, I'm running like 10 seconds a mile faster than I was 4 months ago, just at the same effort. It's like so unglamorous, but it's one of those things that I just think is so important. And, we kind of were talking about like running trails last week and how important it is to just sort of build your foot strength and your ankle strength and just have everything strong. And I mean, it all goes back to the cake analogy, but it is one of those things that, like, if you really do build it up in such a way, I mean, I think about a lot of times, you kind of run across runners that just kind of like decide they're going to get in a half marathon and go out and just crush it, right? And the reason I think that is because they've spent, most of their youth and most of their 20s or whatever building that cake. And it's just sort of like you're saying, it's really difficult to lose it all, maybe even in a few years if they're not running all the time, because it's sort of like me. I feel like I could pick up a baseball bat and go out and swing and be okay right now because I did it so much and it just built it into my system so much that there is this thing about, neuromuscular connections and all these types of things. And I think it's the repetition is really the only, it's the least glamorous thing, but the more you do something and the more you can do something. And, I always fall into that trap. It's like, well, I need to start doing some speed work and getting, but I'm not ready. I got to be careful about that. So with regard to coaching, I think it is one of the hardest things because, you always hear it. I'm not getting any faster. I'm not this and that and whatever. But a lot of times I think that's just a lack of consistency with people. They'll skip a few days, go out and run 40 minutes and be like, I don't know, it's not working or whatever. But I think it's just, it just takes so much time sometimes. And it's not like it takes forever, but it's almost like just distilling it down to being, well, this isn't a 4 to 6 week get fasting. Maybe it's a year long thing. But if you can kind of just put the long game in your brain, then things become, I think, a lot more consistent and a lot more patient and, a lot more realistic. And I was actually thinking about that today. It's like, one of the things I always have wanted to do is, write books about something, as everybody wants to write a book, but I've always just had this thing. And it came to me this morning. I was like, maybe I should just write books, but not think about putting them out. Like actually do it for the love of the game. You know what I mean? Like, it's always that. It's like that to me is the analogy with the race. It's like, are you doing this for your life? Are you doing this to feel better? Are you doing this to be in better shape? Or are you doing it just because you want a result? And then it's like, I in my head, I was going, I could write this book. And I think why I'm afraid to write the book is because no one will want to read it, so it's like, it holds you back. Right. Because it's like, if you don't get the result, does that mean everything you've done before that is worthless? That's not true. So I just think sometimes we get caught up in this, what is that day when I release my book or when I finish my Ironman going to give me and make me, it's just going to make me happy then, right? I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be happier with life and more content. But that's not the truth. It's got to be about the process. It's got to be about engaging in what you're doing in the big picture.
Yeah, and that's like, and as much as I stayed away from talking about swimming, because I had an ample opportunity on Tuesday, I'm going to use that as kind of like the anchor for what I'm trying to get across here is like, that is, we always talk about like slowing people down in the water to make sure they're doing the technique right. And I think this is a point for all sports, right? And it's just been, I guess, top of mind lately with me with like Hayden and where he is with sports and some of the other younger kids that I work with that are in swimming is I think all sports, but swimming especially, and even running to an extent is like, up to a certain age. And this, again, like this is the same thing for adults that are picking up a sport, right? Like effort and motivation and ability and, drive, like that can get you really far, right? Like you can work that hard and you can become that good. But at some point, if you don't have the fundamentals, like in you, the technique in you, the organizational skills in you, the planning, the consistency, all those things, then at some point you're going to be putting out so much effort to go nowhere, right? And you see this a lot with like competitive, some kids that are younger, is they can work so incredibly hard. And they can just be inherently like they're just a hard worker. They can outwork and outmove. They just move their arms faster and their legs harder. But then when everything kind of catches up, right? Or maybe they're taller, or maybe they're just have a better genetic gift out of the gate. Like at some point that stuff evens out, right? And then it becomes like, how efficient are you? Because you can't always outwork the competition. That's just not how it works, right? And so, I always tell parents, this the same goes for, like what we talked about a lot on Tuesday about, form and about posture, is at some point you got to be able to do it right. Because if you can do it right, like for me with swimming, if I take like, 3, 4, 5, 6 months off, I've been doing swimming my whole life.
Yeah.
I was taught the technique at such an early age that I know the technique. All I need is like the fitness to hold it. So as soon as I get a little bit of fitness back, I can go from high 130s down to the mid teens down to the low teens. And like within 3-4 weeks. And it's not like I did anything magical. It's just I've had that like technical skill for I've done it my whole life. Right. So it's hard to take that away. Right. Versus like cycling and running. Like if I take time away from that because I haven't been doing it so long, I come back to that. Like I'm not like doing 10-minute miles and then the next month I'm doing 7s. Right. It takes me, a lot longer to get that fitness back. And so you have to be able to do things right. And I think that's like, again, you can work hard, and again, like I use swimming as an analogy because you see it so often at all ages. You can work, and then all of a sudden you can't. Your work rate, will at some point be at X. Like you cannot create any more work to maintain X speed or to gain X speed, right? And that's what you want to do. You want to gain. You want to get faster. Then it becomes like the technique piece. And so you have to slow them back down again. So you're forced to do it, just like injury, right? Like you run too hard, you do too much, you add too many miles on, then, you're going to be forced, right, to go to PT. You're going to be forced to take time off. And I think when we look at, just like gradual progression and, sustainable progressive overload, none of it is magical. None of it is like, oh gosh, like it should seem insignificant, right? It's the same. The same goes for, if you're trying to like lose weight, right? Like again, we use this kind of when we talked about before the cast is the quicker you lose weight, the quicker you're probably going to put it back on. Right? You drop 20 pounds in 2 months. Well, I can probably guarantee you after you're probably going to put all that weight back on, if not more. But if you take a year to lose 20, now we're negative 20. And you're probably like, you did it in a sustainable way, right? You created habits, you created something you can obviously do for an entire year. You're probably going to keep it off. Right. And you see that, all the time, right? And especially with diet and stuff like that, there's these major swings and then they put it right back on, they put more on. Like, it's just the drastic nature of that is so severe that the repercussion of it is also that severe, right? Like, the more we abstain from something, like the more we want it, the more we want more of it usually, right? And so, like, again, like when you think about gradually and slowly and progressively overloading, it should be insignificant versus, like going back to the diet thing, the body composition, like if you're trying to slowly lose weight and you're doing it slowly, you don't ever notice. You just don't. Yeah. I've been there, done it. Like you just don't notice because it's so small and incremental. Like and then you see a friend like you haven't seen in a month and they're like, holy shit, dude. Like, you look pretty lean. Yeah. And you're like, really? Yeah. You're like, really? Like, because it's been progressive, right? And again, like that's the same thing with fitness, right? You might not see it every day, right? Because you're not trying to PR every run, every ride, and every swim. But you might go out after, like on a random Thursday, because that to me, like that's when you're doing it right. Like a random day, no expectations, and you go out and you're like, oh my gosh, like I just came back like, I got to find, that's one of my favorite phrases. I got to find a new route. Like this was my 30-minute, route back to the house. And I got back in 27 minutes. Like I got to find a new route. And nothing like inherently changed overnight, right? Nothing just happened. They're like, oh, now we're covering the same loop 3 minutes more. It's been such a slow incremental gain because you've been slowly and progressively overloading things and making like sometimes athletes are like, hey, like this week doesn't look that much different than last. You're like, well, that's kind of the point, right? So we're repeatedly stacking things over. You might see like a little bit extra minutes here and there, maybe like a little bit extra volume, slightly more intensity or vice versa. But yeah, I mean, like it shouldn't be these like giant sweeping changes every week, because it is also drastic and you shouldn't notice it. But yeah, I mean, like I got back to the house quicker on my out and back, or I got to find a new loop, or I've been on the trainer all winter long and I went out and did my first ride and I got to the top of the mountain 3 or 4 minutes quicker than I did at all last year. I went and joined a group ride with these guys that I never, that I rode with all last year. And I was like, sucking air to be on the back. And now I'm like the one leading the pack. Like, you don't notice those things, or I got in the pool and this guy that, always comes in and dusts me. Like, oh, now he's asking me for tips. Like, that's like, none of that happens overnight. It's all just like slow, stackable, boring, kind of like the analogy we used a few weeks back about like your house getting built. Right? It's like if you're living across the street and you bought a new house, you're like, I'm going to build this new house. It's right across the street from mine, this nice piece of land. Like it probably looks like legit nothing's happening every day unless you can like visibly see it. And then at some days you're like, I don't think anything's happened for weeks. Right? And they're on the inside, right? Like, they're doing all the inside stuff versus it's a house in a different state maybe, and you haven't seen it in 6 weeks and you come back and you're like, oh my gosh, dude, that like, when did that? It's funny, right? Because I even noticed this, maybe you do too. Like if I go to town for a week and I come back, I'm like, was that there when I left? It's like, like things just like appear and you're like that, but that's how fitness should be, right? It's like you should just slowly and methodically gain your way up. Because again, like that's the stuff that lasts. And when you talk to athletes about it, like one of the beauties of like training that way and being consistent is that if you have a layoff, you're not going to lose nearly as much. Like you're able to get it back pretty quick, right? You're not going to lose nearly as much as a person who's like sporadic and trying these, crazy protocols that get get a 1 week boost. Like, no, like you want stuff that's going to stick, right? And I think that's like one of the more important things you can get across to athletes is like, listen, like, the more, and I'm sure you say the same thing, but when I've got athletes like, yeah, I'm so bummed, like I'm sick, or, I got this work trip. I'm like, dude, this is where consistency, like you can pat yourself on the back, because you're so consistent that this isn't going to make a difference. If anything, you might feel better when you get back because you'll have a couple days off. Like, this is going to be nothing, a complete nothing burger when it comes to your fitness for the year. But if you're an athlete who's always inconsistent and then you're trying to be consistent, you have these like time blocks taken away from you, right? Then it is panic train, right? Because you're probably going to lose some because you don't have that deep level, right, of fitness. And we always talk about it like, being, this really, really big cake. And that is like, it's the foundation of it. And like, that's how hard it is to, I think, the enormity of the base of fitness that we can create and how aerobically efficient we can become and how strong and how deep the fitness can be. Like, it seems like it's almost too much, right? Like the quote I've used a few times, like a couple months, is that people overestimate what they can do in a short term, but underestimate what they can do in the long term. It's very, very similar to, like when I remember first like getting sober, like I couldn't fathom even just like a year. Like I hear somebody in the room, they're like, yeah, this is, celebrating their 1 year, 2 years, whatever. And I'm like, God, that seems like forever away. And if I had have like been like, all right, well, I'm fucked. Like, there's no way I'm going to make it that long. Then I'm probably going to like, do something crazy. Like I need to do some like special, like I need to go some special place, do some special thing. It probably would have taken me all down like the completely terrible road. Right. And so I think, but what got me through it was, man, like all I need to do is do the same thing today that I've been doing the past few days, which is just make it to the time I got to go to bed, right? Do the things I'm supposed to do and then wake up. And now, sitting here in 2026, like, and still sober after, 13 years, it's like nothing was spectacular. But then you look back and you're like, God, that seems like forever. Like, and it's just, I think we get so caught up in what we don't have or how impossible something might be down the road. And right. And like we talk a lot about, I really wish athletes would stop looking at the year as just the year and just commit to having a better lifestyle, being healthier, doing a better job with their food and their fuel and their sleep, like all these different things. Like you do that and it just like stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. And it's not like a brittle, fragile stack. Like we're talking like this is a sturdy foundation that you are not going to be able to mess with. Like it's going to take a lot of neglect and a lot of like, time away from it to just start to disintegrate. Right. Versus like, I wonder how quickly I can do this. Right. And, it's like buying something from IKEA versus like, finding some like local, like, craftsman, like, hey, I want this like custom built, like cabinet. And that, I mean, dude, it's no wonder, like when you get like a hand me down from your grandmother, that shit's been around for like 200 years. Right? Like you've had it for forever. One dude made it. It took him months to make probably. It's not going anywhere. Right. But you build something from IKEA. First of all, you don't know how to build it anyway, because the instructions are in like 19 different languages. You either got 17 extra screws or you're missing 3. And, you put it together and you're like, I got this extra board, don't know where it comes with. And it might last you 6 months. Like there's a reason that certain things don't last. Then there's a reason some things last for what seems like forever.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to, what you're talking about the athlete who says they need a new route. Those are the little signs, right? It's like, man, I am getting, and then, but to me, I always look at this, like what happens, like, 2 weeks later when they do run that route and it's slower, or it might be a little slow. You know what I mean? Like they're on this, I'm getting faster. That's to me is the nexus of how do we react to these situations. It's kind of that going to bed feeling like $1 million and waking up feeling like $1 or something like that. Like the moods or like the attitudes can shift, and then the question becomes, how do you handle that? I've talked about that triathlon loop, or triathlete loop, and I don't want to say it was an existential crisis. Is that a word? But
I know that one. Okay. I know that one.
Last I've been feeling that, because I've been on this triathlete loop thing, and I've kind of just been, it's sort of like, you said that earlier, you can't always outwork somebody. Eventually, you're going to burn out. Like, to me, it was just getting, I can do this. I can always do Ironman. I can suck it up and I can outwork the day or whatever. And then it's just sort of like you get done and you're like, what in the hell? And that's sort of why I've always had this thing bouncing around in my head with training, is always like, how can I make this feel easier? And I think it goes, I say that with just sort of a general sense, but it kind of goes back to what you're saying about form and technique, and really kind of like working those types of things to the point where, I'm picking the sport up as an older athlete. I didn't grow up doing running and swimming, and I did some cycling, but you know what I mean? So cycling always comes a little bit more natural to me. I'm kind of like you are with swimming a little bit with that. I can get kind of going and I can pick things up real quick and get back into it. But so it's like I'm always looking for ways to make it feel easier, not only because it makes me better, but it makes it easier, sort of like, and it's something that I want to do. So when I hit this existential crisis around last fall, and I was like, I got to change something, so I went into this thing around Thanksgiving, and I started going into, just doing little things and just being consistent. But man, it's the struggle. Like, even today, I had a really good day workout yesterday, and I woke up today and I was like kind of off, and I was like, man, I'm not in, this ain't working, but the hardest part is going, no, just, it's like when you're saying about being sober, I'm sure the hardest part is, not every day you wake up and like, man, I'm glad I'm not drinking. I feel amazing. It's those days when you're like, fuck, this ain't working. It'd be so much easier just to have some drink, whatever. Those are the times when, how do you get yourself to just keep buying into the system or the program? It's like, well, I've been saying it to myself too. It's like, today I'm taking off. And then I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do a little bit and do it easy and keep it easy and just stay with it, because I'm seeing enough signs. It's almost like you have to shift the teeter-totter. It's like you're kind of like working your way up, and then you'll start having more better days. It's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like the longer you stay with it, the more consistent you are, the better. It's like it's like what you're saying too, is it gets harder to knock you off. Mm-hmm. So it's really about just sort of buying into the program. A lot of people, I always say this is like, we build these plans for athletes, and the consistency is always the biggest challenge, I think, for most people. And, if you're quote unquote not getting faster, if you just stay with everything and just do it, your race is going to be better. But if we're always trying to strategize and like throw in track work and all these other things all the time, that's, that to me is like a recipe to knock you off that system. And to me, it like always creates that chasing feeling or something. It's like, I got to figure this out. But if it's really kind of, in a sense, it's kind of simple if you just stay with it and just keep doing shit. Like, when you're in recovery, it's like you just kind of probably were doing a lot of shit. You're like, man, I don't know if this is like whatever. But then eventually it sort of clicks. And then you're like, yeah, that does make sense. And it does make it feel easier, and it does feel better. And I'm more consistently in a better frame of mind, So yeah, like I'm passionate about this, I think, because it's not been my way, I did it with certain things, like I said, I would, played baseball my whole life, or just things that come naturally to me now, like you're swimming. But even at the time when you were swimming as a young kid, you're probably like, this sucks, man, I can whatever. But now you realize that that's the way. It's just like, I always kind of marvel at, swim teams and stuff. It's like, you're what? You're swimming the 50 and you're doing 10,000 yards today. It's like those repetitions are really the solution, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, like the less you have to think about something, the easier it is to continue and keep. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you're forcing a routine, right? You're not. Well, if you're forcing a routine, it's probably not a routine yet. right? You're probably still in like the establishing behavior, right, of doing something. But if it feels like a force every single time, then it's probably not going to last, right? Like it's probably not something that's sustainable, right? So that's like anything that is drastic. What is required for it to be so drastic is the removal or the abstinence from something else or the addition of so much more. And those are both two extremes, right? So it's a drastic and extreme, like to do these, like the requirement is enormous. And the larger the requirement, the more likely it is, for the result, the solution to break or to not get there, right? Or to only be able to happen like one or two times. Right, like I was kind of not joking, I guess, but also like talking about before we went live. And I think this is along the same track. It was, this guy was talking about how, he thinks like the majority of like sports science, research is like not irrelevant, but is close to irrelevant for most people because most sports science and research is like we're looking at like 6 to 8 weeks. And it's hard because it's hard to find anybody to do it for longer, and you have to do it every day. And he was like, how many people you coach could fit in that category? And I'm like less than 20% probably, maybe even less, that are consistent with that period of time. And so because it's a drastic thing they're trying to get them to do. And like we just don't do well with drastic things. So, or the point can also be like, well, then is that even applicable to the people who aren't consistent, right? And so I think it can go both ways in that category. But when it comes to like because what they're doing is so drastic, right? They're every single day the same protocol, the same time, the same thing to make sure that they can keep everything even across the board and baseline. That they're like, I can't do this for any longer. Right, because it's such a drastic change. That's why they're like, hey, we're going to do this. They're going to do this. The length of the study is going to be a year. You're not going to find anyone, right? Because they're like, no, I can't even fathom what it would be to do that unless it's something like easy, like popping a pill, But yeah, like the things you don't like that. When I swim, I don't have to think. Like I know what to do because I've been doing it so long. But other things, like I have to think about it. And so the more ingrained it is, and the longer you've done it, like the less you have to think. But the more drastic something is, the more intensity you have. Like the requirement to make it that much more intense and maybe that much more frequent, or to overreach to a certain extent, like the requirement costs from the other areas of your life or the other areas of like recovery and training and sustainability, like they become so much more fragile. Right. But the things you don't have to think about, or the routine that's ingrained in your schedule, like it isn't just what you do, right? It's just now like you do it, like you said, you do it without thinking, right? And for me, that's swimming, and for you, that's cycling. Like you have a certain routine you do in the morning, you get up, do the same thing, like, you probably get in the shower and you probably do the same routine without even thinking about it. You probably brush your teeth the exact same way every single time without even blinking. Right? The same exact way. And there's all these different things that we do, right? That we do in the exact, that's why, like, when you change things around in your house, you pivot and you look at something that used to be there, even though it's not there, right? Or you move things around your pantry, you walk in, you immediately go to your right to grab the protein powder, but, somebody want to rearrange the pantry, so now it's like in the bottom left. And it might take you a freaking month to figure it out. Or it's like everyone that has like a panel with like 4 light switches in their kitchen, you're never going to figure out exactly which one goes to what, right? It might take you the entire time you live at your house to figure out, oh, this light goes to this. It's just a mystery. But it's like, that's like going to a different grocery store is stressful, right? Because you don't know where shit is, right? But like all these little things, like again, that we don't have to think about. You just do them because it's just part of because you've been doing them for so long and they've been so small and insignificant that you can do it almost blindfolded. You can probably walk parts of your house. You can probably walk, things, like walking downstairs or grab a cup of coffee. You could probably do it blindfolded, right? But if you're in a different house, you got nothing, right? You're going to be running into walls and tripping over things, where anything is. There's just so many things that, again, like the more slowly you ingrain, the more routines that become so built up, because like you said, yeah, are you going to want to swim every day? Nope. You're going to want to run every day? Nope. Cycle? Nope. Like all these things? No. The answer is no, right? Because a lot of times it's not exciting, which is why like we get so enamored with things that are different and new and seem like they're exciting. Well, that also probably means they're not like they're either one, not sustainable, right? Because they're too hard and they're asking too much, right? Or your attention span is not sustainable. Because if it was, then you probably wouldn't have looked at this in the first place. Right. And that's a conversation I like to have, and I think every coach has with athletes that have had multiple coaches. Right. And you're like, well, why do you bounce around so much? And like sometimes you're like, well, have you ever thought, right, like that maybe it's not always the coach, maybe sometimes it's just you, right? And sometimes athletes is like, hey, like, I love working with you. I just need a change. I just need something different. And sometimes they really do. And sometimes it's used as like a catalyst to hopefully propel them to be more excited. Right. But I think a lot of times, like, just general excitement is overrated. Like, because excitement is a drastic feeling, right? Like you don't wake up every day excited. I mean, I know some people do. And I'm like, always like, man, that person's like always happy. It is kind of like a red flag, right? I'm like, man, like, I'm not sure what you're on, but like, I could use some of it, like maybe twice a week, but I don't want to be like so drastic, right? And, we have, every coach has athletes that, it's either the best workout or it's the worst. Like, it's never just kind of like even, but yeah, like you don't wake up every day over the moon excited. You just don't, right? You just wake up and you just do the day. Right. And some things create excitement. Some things create sadness. Those are drastic feelings. Right. And so the more like drastic and extreme that you look for, like the sustainability of that is zero. Right. You're never going to sustain it because, one, it can't always be exciting. It's also not always going to be the worst ever. Right. And also, like, instead of just, again, like this is something that I, struggle with as well, is like just trying to, like, the exciting thing should be that there really isn't that much excitement. Because again, like that, if it's overly exciting or overly the other way, like sometimes that's scary. I know it's scary for me sometimes to like not have like something going on. Like I struggle with that immensely. And I think like that's when you have to be like, man, like this was just a really good day. And you're like, what happened? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I guess nothing bad happened, right? Like that's like sometimes I'll finish like my day off and I'm like, man, like that day was awesome. And then I'll be talking to Hayden or Allie and like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. Like woke up and had coffee and did my job and the work and I don't know. It was just a good day, so it was nothing crazy, nothing injected in that was different or special to the day. It was just the totality of the day and that it was even, right? And there was nothing spectacular, and as I think sometimes we probably jab at our kids too much. I'm hating like, how Jay is like, that's fine. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, what else? Like I want him to be excited. I'm like, that's the only answer I ever gave. Like, it was fine. It was fine. And then I get to thinking, I'm like, that's actually probably a good thing, right? Like, it's like he didn't have a horrible day. It was just fine. Like nothing. It was just like, hey, nothing exciting. I mean, the kid like loves going to school. So what else can you ask for? But yeah. So, with training and in life and, a lot of things like the, and you see this with like, toxic relationships. It's either like we're getting married tomorrow or we're broke up. Right. It's like, it's one thing and the other, and you see that with training, right. Too. It's like, I'm all in. Like I'm going to do 400 milers, a couple Ironmans, and then I'm going to do like this 50-mile swim in January of next year. I got this whole thing planned out. And then like the next week they're like, I have no motivation to train. Right? Because the buzzkill is now gone, right? The excitement is now gone. And yeah, it's almost like, the more boring and the more boring things can be, the better off you'll be. And I think that's a really hard thing for triathletes to chew on.
Yeah, I agree. And I say these things usually from my own perspective because I know what that feels like. My father was an alcoholic and so I would always kind of investigate what it's like to be an adult child of an alcoholic. And one of the things on there, one of the laundry list things is we became addicted to excitement. And when I think about that in a modern day, I think about the characteristics maybe of alcoholism and what that means. And one of the things is like fear of abandonment or whatever. And I just think a lot of modern families probably deal with similar traits, that the parents are gone a lot or whatever. And I think we have a tendency to be in this mode of being excited. We want to be excited. I was talking about before the cast about how, we can follow the Hollywood diet, 8 weeks to shred it or whatever. And it's sort of like that excites me, the thought of that, but it's so hollow, based on everything else we're talking about. And for me, it's really important to kind of ground myself in that long-term process. And it's ongoing work, because it is tempting to, put the race on the calendar and need that motivation. And, excitement is kind of, it's sort of a product of everything now. I always talk about like anything I watch, any game I watch on TV, I just want to watch the game. And they're always trying to jam more like quote unquote exciting events within the game and like, graphics and all this kind of crap. And it's sort of like, it just frustrates me because at the core, it's really nice to kind of get back to a solid foundation and not be overly, reactionary to everything. And so as I go through these, this like, I guess it's a mission that I'm sort of on in a way where I'm trying to be patient and just accept that this is like what I'm going through and trust it in the long term, because it's so easy to get derailed with, different programs. And I was saying like a lot of these YouTube or Instagram influencer types, sometimes I'll be like, oh, this dude's got it going. And, like I was telling you beforehand, he's like, all I do is eat eggs and have sex. And like, he's like 28. And I'm like, yeah, maybe that's the plan I need to be on. But I think it's just, I could have ate anything at 28 and been, probably energized, so it really is hard to kind of like step back from everything we're looking at constantly with new ideas. And, that was one of the things is like, man, I gotta, it's just a lifelong battle to stay away from every new damn thing I hear, as in it's like the savior, so, it's like, here we are selling nothing again. It's like, we're just going down this, we have no quick fix waiting for you, and I think it's good, but it's a tricky sell in this day and age.
Yeah, dude, it is. It's a hugely tricky sell. And I think that's like, again, like that's why it's nothing to sell. Right. Like, but as you're talking, I was doing some quick math and I did like a quick comparison of drastic versus non-drastic, because we get so caught up, right? We talk about like over the course of a year, but even just like over the course of a week, right? And I did the math, and so like take the person that works out only 5 days a week, but is consistently just 5 out of 7 days a week for the whole year, right? Mm-hmm. They get in 260 workouts versus the person that does 2 perfect weeks and then gets nothing in, every third week. Well, the person who just averaged 5 is going to get in 17 more workouts, 3 more weeks of work, than the person who's does like the drastic, like all in and then all out. Even that's even with them being all in 2 weeks and all out 1 week. So like I just think like as you were talking, like I kept going back to like the periods where I've trying to be more like focused with body composition, where if I start off the day with like a solid meal, my whole day is pretty solid. Like I'm very like, because my breakfast wasn't drastic. I didn't eat too much, but I also didn't try to eat too little because I was cutting calories. But the times when I've tried to change like body composition, I've tried to like really, really, really cut down on breakfast and then take that same mentality into lunch. By dinner time, I always make mistakes because I've gone so far the other direction. I'm like craving everything. I'm like, fuck it. Like, just give me a cheeseburger. And then have a cheeseburger, you got to have something sweet afterwards. So it's a net negative. instead of just like, spreading your, it's the same thing as like if you're having 2,000 calories a day, let's just take snacks out of it for easy math. It's like, just make it a pretty simple, like, 650 for all 3 meals versus, 200 for lunch, 300 for, 200 for breakfast, 300 for lunch, and you try to shove 1,500 calories into dinner because you're so hungry and so starved. Those 1,500 calories probably aren't going to be the best calories for you. And like just spreading things out and making them even, like it's just, again, there's nothing to sell, right? And the best coach on the planet will tell you, like, there is no secret. Like, we don't do anything that is secret. We just are able to do, like, we just do all the very like non-spectacular stuff way more than you do. Way more volume, way more easier all the time. That's what we can do versus you. But then they try to like mirror that to professionals, and they wonder why like they don't get any better. And or we spend times, like we talked about on Tuesday, like we spend that extra time, and we just, instead of like working on better posture on the bike, we just throw 3K at a disc wheel, right? It's like that you're not going to get any better pedaling with, right? You're going to be that guy, right? And so like these are all things like this, like the because I had a couple people this morning even just like on some like run drills I've been trying to force people to do. I can't force anybody to do, but was like, they're like, man, like this really is helping. And like, I feel better. I'm running more efficiently. I'm not like having any niggles. And I'm like, yeah. And none of it shows up anywhere besides like how you feel, right? Like it doesn't show up with extra medals and training peaks. Doesn't show up in Strava segments yet, where you get your extra kudos. Like it's just, it just looks very, like boring. Like you just miss it. Right. That's the kind of stuff that if you just keep on checking, and that's why like you try not to like bring anybody's mood down, but I'm always very like, if an athlete's way up or way down, I try to just bring them back to the middle a little bit, or like reduce or add by 20%. Like, hey man, I know we're pretty stoked right now. I love the training we're doing. Let's keep our eye on the prize, right? Let's not get tunnel vision. Like you don't want to bring an athlete like super happy, like down. You want to keep them, chill, but you always want to kind of keep him in that kind of like even, like, yeah, like this was good, and that's like something that we learned as parents, like on the reward system, like, as parents, like your kid does something great, like, yeah, let's go get ice cream. And they're like, well, that's just like, we can't do that. So now if we take him, it's like hating to get ice cream after a hockey game, we try to take him after his worst games and after his best games to like to make sure that he knows like, hey, we'll go do something fun no matter how you played. Doesn't matter, right? Played great, we're getting ice cream. You played like shit, we're going to get ice cream. Like you can't attach these rewards to certain things, because then you're always asking like, was that a reward, right? Or was this reward worthy, right? And adults are like this with their training, right? Like, we're like this all the time with our training. Like, how was it, how'd this look to you? I'm like, I don't know, looked like a 30-minute run. Like, like fist bump, bro. Like, way to go. Like, you want to hug it out? Let's rock. Like, I don't know what you're looking for me here, but you did 30, right? And it's funny, like in one of the same podcasts as this coach that I've just like a immense amount of respect for, he said something just like really hit me. He said, the difference between doing 10 minutes and doing nothing is astronomical. And whether that's 20, 25, 30 minutes of a this or there, like how that stuff adds up, but how most athletes see 10 minutes as so insignificant and are more likely to do 0 than they are to do 20 is just holding themselves back, because the 20 isn't exciting. The 30 isn't even exciting. Why am I going to the gym for 2K? Why am I getting on my bike for a solid hour recovery spin? Why am I, only running 20 minutes here? But if you do all those, you're adding them up, and now we're adding 8 hours to your month. If I told you guys to do that, they'd be like, sign me up. But if you kind of weave it in an unexciting way, it doesn't seem as exciting. You know what I mean? And so it's probably something that every one of us, right, is maybe not struggle with, but like been battling as a kid, is like the extremeness of the wins, the loss, right? Because that's how we grew up in sport, right? We grew up in the wins and losses, right? We won and we lost. We got better or we didn't, right? And that's kind of how we're trained, and that's kind of how we're conditioned to always rate. Like it's a win or a loss. There's nothing in between, right? And I think, and then as we age, right? Because a lot of triathletes are like former athletes, or at least played some kind of organized sport growing up. We have a hard time detaching ourselves from like every kid, right? Every parent has every kid be like, I really don't feel like going to practice. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to games, they're like, I'm not missing a game. That's why you can threaten them with like, if you're too sick to go to school, you can't play in the game. They're like, I'm going to school. Right? But if you're like, if you don't go to school today, you can't go to practice. You're like, I don't feel very well. Right? It's like the mundane, the practice, like, which is what we do with our training. It's not as exciting as a race, but the races and the games, like, that's what gets us up. But they just happen so infrequently for us as triathletes. Like we try to want and wish our way to these wins or look for losses that are just very, very detrimental, I think, to the overall development of the athlete.
I agree. Yeah. We used to, I think we might've had a podcast once called 80% meh. And it's sort of like, that's one of the things I don't know if excited is the right word, but I'm trying to find that like excitement in boring. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I'm excited to go out and actually just feel good and not crush myself right now, but I'm just going to go out and kind of move. And there's like, that's a weird one. It's a weird one to kind of be like, this doesn't seem like it's going to do anything for me. But yeah, it's like, and most people you'll see too will talk about, weight loss or getting fit or whatever is that kind of lower, aerobic stuff. And that everyone just makes it seem boring. It's like, how do you put the enjoyment in boring? And it's not that hard if you kind of just twist your brain a little. It's like, I'm looking forward to this like easy run today. I don't always have to go hammer it. You mix in the hammers, and a lot of times that kind of comes out naturally, but like forcing the hammer all the time really can wear you down. And I you go up quick, but you go down just as quick sometimes. And, we've seen it all the time.
Yeah. It's like the boring part. Like I was thinking, like if I, sometimes, and Mom, if you're listening, I know I should do better, but like if I call my mom, she'll be like, first thing she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. What's wrong? But she got so conditioned back when I was an alcoholic to like get, bad phone calls. But it's like, I was like, you I know you want to hear from me, but like, you kind of don't. Because if you don't hear from me, like, yes, I mean, like, doesn't mean like something's great's happening, but it just means my life's kind of boring. Like, I'm just kind of doing, like, there's no like crazy thing that's going on, or I'm waiting to hear back from this, or like this horrible thing happened. Like you said, like 80%, you're just like, you kind of just don't want to hear from me. It just means I'm just like chugging away. Which is odd, right? Because that's the kind of things that most people work for, right? Is like the things are, because it's, I mean, we don't appreciate it enough in the moment. I know I don't, and I struggle with that. I mean, as you know, it's like you don't really appreciate it when things are running so smoothly until something is added or taken away from that smoothness. And then you're like, man, like that was like really, really smooth. Like, and like, I wasn't like overly excited, but I was just like, yeah, like, I don't know. Like my day was kind of boring. Like he asked me all the time, he's like, how was your day? What'd you do? And I'm like, dude, like it was kind of boring. But then I'm like, I had a good day. Like I didn't get upset and yell at anybody, didn't get stressed. Like it was pretty easy. Like, all right. So instead of like pretty boring, it was like, it was pretty awesome. Right. But we always say it was like, unless something like over the top happened, you just kind of say like, it was fine. It was boring. And I think like, again, going back to like kind of giving him a hard time about not giving me more information about how school was, I'm like, hey, all right, well, good. Like, nothing terrible happened at least. So at least like a good day, and that's kind of like what we what you want, and you find out the good days and the bad days when the report card comes or the tests come home. You're like, all right, well now we can have a good day or a bad day because now we kind of see how all the fine days have been going, and you celebrate the wins and you try to figure out if you got any losses. It really is that simple, right? When you kind of think about it, how boring most things should be. And then also, like, if you're like the freedom to be okay with the boring, right? Which is not easy for a lot of people, myself included, is, when you find that freedom and kind of like, low level, I guess, joy and content with the boring, like you don't have those expectations. So you're not looking for daily wins, because when you look for them, you're probably not going to find as many as you want. So if you don't find a win, you're going to find a loss. Like you're not going to be like, today was a tie, right? You're just going to find a loss. And then or if it wasn't as amazing as you thought it was going to be, then it's a complete letdown. But if you didn't have any expectation, like you wouldn't even have thought twice. It would have been like a pretty good day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like, yeah, I mean, I know we're selling hard today on like the flashy and the flashy and shiny, baby, all day long.
Well, one of the things quick is what I've started to do a little bit better is when I do have quote unquote boring stuff on the plate, I kind of like, I don't think of it as boring as much as like I'm working on that foundation, because it's like really sinking in a way. It's kind of like you were talking about building a house. If you rush the foundation, yeah, it'll, look fine for a while, but it'll crumble. But like, if you think about it, long-term health, long-term weight loss, long-term, racing calendar, whatever, I'm just building foundation today. I'm not being boring. It's not boring. It's not boring at all. It's fundamental.
Fundamentals are boring.
Yeah, I mean that's our challenge to shift the mindset,
right? Exactly,
into like, damn, that dude is fundamentally sound.
Yeah, it's they do it without thinking. It's just effortless, but it wasn't always effortless, right? They just slow down to do the right things the right way for the right amount of time. Because listen, the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. And it's funny, right? Because you have to tell, and you're seeing it now with kids, right? And is like, they're so busy and they're so like all the time that I have to tell a lot of the kids that I work with, like, I'm like, listen, like I need you to slow down in your mind and your body. Like, we can't work with full speed. Like, we're not going to get any better. Let's just slow down, like chill out, and we'll do it slowly and we'll do it right. And it's almost like anxiety driving, right? Because you feel like you're getting slower. Same thing when you tell somebody to run slower. All right, if you really want to get better long term, like do more of your runs slow and a couple of them hard, and like, oh, I'm getting slower. Like, that's not how it works, right? But it's like, but you feel that way, right? Because you're looking for something. It's really not because it's because you feel that way, but you have a disproportionate relationship about, you expect something, or you have a result in mind that you feel like dictates getting faster or a win. And if that's removed and you don't have that opportunity, then you're now losing. And I think that's just a really hard, thing for, again, like not just kids to grasp, but like adults, right? It's just like it's just really, 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 really hard to like you want to, some people love sweating. Like, I love feeling the hard work. Some people don't. It's just like we all have these things that are unique to us, and it's been driven by past coaches, past experiences, like how we were raised, our parents, our own self-worth, or our own expectations. Like, those play way more of a part into, I think, like how athletes develop and their success and, their ability to succeed, short term and long term, how susceptible they are to burnout. And it's so much about the chin up and what the value and the value that you have and the value that you're looking for. Because, man, like if you're looking for a lot, like I know we've talked about a ton over the last, 8 or 9 years about just the post Ironman depression. It's like, it's because you thought this was going to change you. like you thought the finish line was going to change you. You didn't put any work into changing you before you got to the finish line. And that's when people had these like deep Ironman depression, because they thought it was going to like, you know, they're going to be the same person, do the same things, but just cross a finish line. All of a sudden they get a medal and a shirt, and they go back to work that day, and, you know, they work back the next day on a Monday, and people ask them how their 5K was. And all of a sudden they're in like deep depression because they're like, this really didn't do anything for me. You know, it was exciting for all of about 2 seconds, right? You're on the podium, you're on there for like 20 seconds. And like I said, then you go back to work or your family, and you're like, oh, how was your color run? You know, and you're like, all your dreams are dashed, and like it's robbed you, you know, of all things. And you're like, damn it, like I got a lot more work to do. So yeah, the boring and the even and the gray and like keeping things like, there's so much magic in there that it doesn't seem like magic, right? It's like and that's why that's hard to sell. But the people that are in it, you know, like you can't really just, you know, you can't describe it, right? Because it's not something that's drastic. It's just something that you do and becomes who you are. And then that's where, and then the end is the magic, right? Like the race, but then you just pick right back up and do it again.
Damn. Okay.
What do you mean? Yeah, I know, right? Just so disappointing. But don't worry. Next Tuesday, we'll come back to you with the 5 best swim workouts you can do to transform your Ironman time. And I guarantee you do these 5 workouts over the course of a month, you'll drop a minimum of 3 minutes or your money back. Is that more like it? You can work with that, right? From a marketing standpoint.
Oh yeah, I could tease that for a week.
You can tease that for a week. We probably shouldn't do swimming, right? Because they're like, swimming, I don't do 5 workouts in a month, much less like, you know, going to do your 5 workouts. Yeah, we'll do something. We'll make like a new water bottle that saves 45 watts.
Okay.
So sell up for 900 and see what happens. Yeah, coming to you soon. The new C26 water bottle saves you 450 watts.
All right, man. All right. Yeah. Well, I'm running out of gas.
Yeah. I get it. I got it. Good luck to everybody racing this weekend, wherever you are, whatever race you're doing. Yeah, check Oceanside if you can. I'm sure it'll be a good race. I know it's televised on YouTube. And yeah, if you still got a team in the Sweet 16, I hope they win. Unless you're Iowa State, then I hope you lose. As always, we love you guys, and we very much appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. There's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available, Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Have a great weekend.
You too, man. See you, dude.